We will now proceed to the keynote remarks. The keynote speaker is Mr. Masato Kanda, Vice Minister of Finance for International Affairs, Ministry of Finance of Japan. Mr. Kanda, please.
Good morning, distinguished participants and guests. I very much appreciate this great opportunity to speak to you today. We are standing at a critical juncture in human history as the world continues to face multiple shocks such as the illegal and unjustified Russia's war against Ukraine and the lingering effect of the COVID-19 pandemic and inflation and so on. At the same time, underlying structural changes such as digitalization and climate change continues to disrupt and shape our economies and societies. The need for multilateral cooperation, be it amongst policymakers or experts in their respective fields to tackle common and complex challenges, is more important than ever. The G7 finance track, along with other streams in the G7, values the contribution that G7U makes to the G7 in exploring the breadth and depth of policy challenges confronting the global economy and providing solutions on how to respond. With around 2 weeks before G7 finance ministers and central bank governors meet in Niigata, I'd like to outline the finance track's priorities under Japan's presidency and highlight some of the progress made so far. Unlike some other G7 tracks, finance ministers and central bank governors have the benefit of meeting regularly, with meeting in person already in February and April, and a few more in the second half of this year. This allows us to advance key parts of our agenda while responding promptly to global economic and financial market developments, such as most recently the banking crisis. The finance track under Japan's presidency has been organized under 3 broad pillars: tackling the immediate challenges facing the global economy, enhancing global economic resilience, and examining how we can improve our economic policymaking to boost economic welfare. Our immediate top priority this year has been to continue supporting Ukraine and exerting maximum pressure on Russia with coordinated sanctions and other measures. The bilateral support committed by G7 members and international partners, including Japan's fresh contribution of $5.5 billion, along with the recently approved $15.6 billion IMF program, is expected to address Ukraine's most urgent financing needs and allow them to safeguard government functioning, provide basic services, and repair critical infrastructure. We hope that the IMF program will be successful and Ukraine can implement the necessary reforms which should help to catalyze further financial support. The finance track has also continued to monitor the effectiveness of the comprehensive sanctions and economic measures against Russia, take additional actions as needed, and work to prevent circumvention and evasion. To strengthen this effort, for instance, I chaired with the US Deputy Secretary the first G7 deputies meeting of the enforcement coordination mechanism the day before yesterday. Meanwhile, the recent banking sector events has required our attention. We have stressed that the financial system remains resilient. It's resilient indeed, and supported by the prompt responses by G7's authorities, as well as the financial and regulatory reforms implemented after the 2008 global financial crisis, Lehman. We need to stay vigilant given recent financial sector development illustrates the significant uncertainty over the global outlook. We stand ready to take actions to safeguard financial stability while keeping into account changes in the financial market environment, such as the rapid spread of information via social media and other fast-moving digital technologies. The other immediate challenge the finance track is tackling is on debt and development, reflecting a much less favorable external environment for many vulnerable developing countries. including rising interest rates and the economic impact from Russia's war. There is an urgency of addressing debt vulnerabilities in low and middle-income countries. The G7 has continued to show leadership in making progress on individual cases of debt treatment and the effective implementation of the G20's common framework for low-income countries. We have successfully completed the debt treatment of Chad last year, while we want a swift resolution to the cases of Zambia and Ghana. There was a welcome commitment by all G20 finance ministers in February to step up common framework's implementation. We know we can do more to improve the process, including how the engagement process is more effective for debtor countries. We have also seen some progress with the debt treatment case of Sri Lanka, a middle-income country outside of common framework, through the recent formation of a creditor committee co-chaired by France, India, and Japan. We hope a swift resolution of Sri Lanka's case provides a model for how multilateral coordination can resolve debt issues in other middle-income countries. I, together with French and Indian counterparts, to form the first creditor committee meetings very soon. Furthermore, the financial track is also supporting initiatives to ensure multilateral development banks, MDBs, can bolster financial and technical assistance on global public goods, including through efficiently using their capital and bolstering their lending capacity. This includes efforts underway at the World Bank to review its mission, operational approach, and financial capacity, which have seen an initial proposal of financial reform that can add up to $50 billion of financing capacity over the coming decades. At the same time, we are stressing the need to safeguard MDB's long-term financial sustainability, robust credit rating of AAA, and preferred creditor status, as these are the indispensable foundation of MDBs to continue to fulfill their roles with concessional lending. We have also advanced joint efforts to support countries most in need through the voluntary channeling of special drawing rights, SDR, toward the global ambition of $100 billion. Japan recently increased its pledge to 40% of its allocated SDRs from 20%, so doubled. And we hope that other willing and able countries will provide further pledges. The second priority pillar for the finance track relates to the structural forces driving the immediate challenges facing the global economy, such as climate change and economic security risks. On climate change, the finance track is advancing economic and policy analysis work on climate change mitigation and promoting collaboration on adaptation, such as disaster risk financing. The finance track is also exploring how to balance economic efficiency and resilience. Amid the repercussion of the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's illegal war, economic resilience has been brought into sharper focus. The flow of cross-border economic activities, including global supply chains, investment, and payments, are increasingly being viewed through the lens of achieving both economic efficiency and resilience, in particular on supply chain resilience. Diversifying highly concentrated parts of the supply chains of imported products for clean energy, such as solar PV panels or wind turbines, can contribute to safeguarding energy security along with broader macroeconomic stability. To that end, in April, we committed to strengthening collaboration amongst the G7 countries and partners through the effective use of our respective public finance tools based upon the high-level policy guidance for public finance tools to build resilient supply chains in the era of decarbonization. It's very long, so we call it RISE, R-I-S-E. While strengthening supply chain resilience and promoting climate action, another key part of this guidance is how we can assist low and middle-income countries to play bigger roles in supply chains and enhance their value creation. We are currently exploring the development of a mutually beneficial partnership with these countries in collaboration with MDBs to turn the guidance into tangible action. The finance track is also making progress on financial digitalization, taking into account opportunities and risks of digital money, such as central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and crypto assets, including how to assist developing countries when they wish to develop CBDCs. On global health, on COVID-19 pandemic starkly shows that enhancing global health is a global public good. Safeguarding our society against the next pandemic requires us to make continuous multilateral efforts towards better pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response, or PPR. The finance track is exploring options to enhance the capacity to swiftly provide funds in response to future pandemics. They are part of PPR. To complement the pandemic fund, which was launched last year. The last priority pillar is a new topic that I have introduced in the finance track for the first time ever in the G7 history. It is about how to improve economic policy making in pursuit of welfare. Over several decades, our economic and social structures have undergone dynamic and fundamental transformation, which has raised the awareness of GDP's limitations as a key proxy for welfare. For instance, free digital services have expanded rapidly, but GDP doesn't fully capture digitalization-related activities. Values that are not measured by GDP, such as environmental sustainability and inequality, have gained significance in our policy making and are at the core of promoting social stability. As you see, populism is prevailing all over the world. This is one of the problems which we've got to deal with. And consequently, these issues have made measuring economic well-being and designing effective economic policies more complex. The finance track, with the help of eminent experts in this field, is discussing the various efforts to address these issues. For instance, we had productive discussion on this topic at an international symposium in Tokyo in March. Although GDP will and should remain an important yardstick with necessary updates and improvements to accommodate the digital services. For instance, G7 finance ministers and central bank governors will also explore how to better utilize a range of other policy tools and indicators to enhance people's welfare. Let me conclude here. I look forward to the valuable contribution that T7 you can make to ensure that G7 can continue responding to the many challenges confronting us in order to promote economic stability and prosperity for all. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vice Minister Masato Kanda. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us and providing your perspectives and insights for us. So already you mentioned debt crisis, but let me ask one further question about your kind of prospect for the revisions of the common framework for debt treatment and other measures, possible measures for containing and hopefully preventing the future debt crisis. And I would like to take some, maybe few questions from the floor. Okay, 1, 2, yeah. So Amber first, and then Jenny.
I'm Anbu from Area Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. I think my question is more about the synergy between G7 and G20. 2 weeks back, as a part of this finance and the central bank governors meeting, Indian finance minister met Japan's finance minister and proposed an agenda for cooperation that include the debt vulnerability, food security, climate change, digitalization, and disaster risk management. What could be, I think she will be here again the next week, and so what could be the follow-up for this proposal, and what could be the role for the think tanks? Thank you.
And then, Nicola, please pass the microphone to Jenny.
Thank you very much. Jenny Gordon, Australian National University. I'd really love to get your views on the role of central banks and what the extent to which internationally we need coordination across the mandates of central banks. So central bank independence has been a kind of a key criteria, and the inflation focus has been a main one. But clearly there are ramifications of focusing on controlling inflation on other countries, particularly when the US does so. So what is the thinking on taking into account those spillover effects? Should central banks be worried about things other than inflation and financial stability, such as ensuring they're encouraging green finance? And so what's that interaction? Thank you.
And then, Amar, did you raise your hand?
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, Kanda-san, you will not have to answer all the questions. So then I'm asking some questions, and then you will choose which to answer. So Amar, please.
Thank you very much for your remarks. As you know, this is a very, very important year for climate, and we have an ambitious agenda. One area where G7 leadership will be very important is in the finance agenda, as you pointed out. And clearly the MDB part is very crucial. But another part which is also symbolically very important is the delivery of the 100 billion. And as you know, at Carbis Bay, G7 made commitments to meet that. And we are really hopeful that in 2023, we can move beyond the 100 billion. How do you see the finance ministers meeting coming up, giving impetus to that agenda?
Finally, a question from a Japanese gentleman.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to ask you about climate change, particularly divestment from fossil fuel sector as a way to make a transitions to net zero and renewable energy based society. I appreciate your insight on this. Thank you.
So Kanda-san, you have to go to the Prime Minister's office soon, so maybe you have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Those excellent questions all are really relevant and timely, and actually many of them are really under discussion amongst the ministers and we deputy ministers. And the first, I think I've got a question on the debt, G20, G7 collaboration, central bank role, and climate change and so on. Those are very important, and probably each of them I can develop discussion for 24 hours. So it's quite challenging. But on debt issue, I think there has been progress in G20 discussions, and I think it is quite remarkable at the February G20 meeting in India. They unanimously agreed upon the paragraph of debt issues, which is probably first time because one or two countries had been objecting all the time. But so this is a significant achievement, and the G20 should deliver results in line, concrete results, tangible results in line with the commitments they made in the paragraph. However, much needs to be done, and G20 and Paris Club creditors are working on country case and the common framework. As I said, we need to swiftly conclude the treatment of Zambia, and we expect the IMF and Ethiopia to reach a staff-level agreement on the IMF-supported program, and the creditor committee for Ghana should be formed as soon as possible. I think the Ghana is quite close, but still some problem. And the official bilateral creditors should also closely coordinate to address vulnerable countries. As I said, Sri Lanka is a very fast case. As you know, in the past, the Paris Club have handled this kind of things because the advanced countries have the most shares of the lending to the poor countries. But recently, China and the private debt holders are increasing their share. So we created the G20 common framework for poor countries. But for middle-income countries at this age, we didn't have any mechanism. So Sri Lanka case is the first one. If we succeed, we can, pave the way for the dealing with the new problems. So this is very significant. And another thing, as for the debt, very much important thing is data transparency and data sharing, not only for the debt restructuring, for the countries we have, already been engaged, but for the prevention of the future debt problem. So we, as the G7 presidency, is leading the data sharing exercise in which the G7 and willing Paris Club creditors share their lending data with the World Bank to enable debt data reconciliation. And we look forward to the expansion of this exercise to G20 countries as a whole to further improve the transparency and data accuracy. And I've got the very important questions about the G20, G7 nexus, and also the how to realize the proposals made by G20 presidency and so on from to gentlemen. And actually, probably you can't imagine how closely the G20 and G7, or more precisely, G20 chair India and G7 chair myself, frequently communicating and coordinating, and in many areas, G7 is trying to contribute to the G20 process and the main agendas, of course, including you mentioned about the MDBs and climate change and so on. Those are, the rather difficult, complicated issues, even inside the G7, and of course, amongst the G20 countries, there are many contentious issues, but we are very much contributing to G20 and in a very good discussion. And in addition, for instance, Russia's prolonged war of aggression has exacerbated global economic challenges, and support for Ukraine and exerting pressure on Russia is our immediate top priority. And it's the G7 that has led the international community in condemning Russia and providing unwavering support to Ukraine since its outbreak of the war. And so this is, the G7's critical role at the juncture of heightened geopolitical and economic uncertainty. And the G7 and other like-minded countries are united on many parts of the G20 agenda, leading to many fruitful outcomes at least G20 meetings. And as I said, on that issue, the consensus amongst the G20, whole G20 countries was done last February, and we are proud that we contributed quite a lot to formulating this consensus. And another thing is, the chair's summary of the G20 finance ministers and central governors meeting in Bangalore last February included a strong condemnation of Russia's war in Ukraine as agreed by G20 members, except Russia and China only, and it was really visible. So there are many things we can collaborate, and actually we are in a very good collaboration. And central bank, this is really important issue, and we have discussed so quite often. But the first thing I believe is to protect the independence of the central bank. This is very much anchor of the system. And the other thing, but central bank should take into account the various relevant issues, which is ultimately leading to have implication for the central mandate of the price level, or in some countries the wage or the prosperity itself. And spillover effect is very much important, particularly for the emerging and developing countries. Actually, in the past, the very rapid hike of the main central banks in the Western countries triggered sort of global financial crisis and the debt problem in the emerging countries. So, many jurisdictions are asking the very careful approaches. And indeed, in the last years, the G20 communique included the sort of a sentence that the tightening at the speed, the pace of tightening monetary policy should calibrate, taking into account sort of this cross-border spillover effect. This is quite a fair account and very important for the stability of the global financial market as well. Probably
Okay, thank you very much. So, yeah, very good policies and perspectives. And you spoke 8 minutes, not just 5 minutes. So thank you very much for your generosity. And please join me giving him big hands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kanda. And also thank you for moderating the Q&A session, Mr. Tetsushi Sonobe, Dean of ADBI and T7 Japan Lead Chair.